If you open any Torah scroll, you will find right at the center, chapter 19 of the book of Leviticus, a section known as the Holiness Code, which is often understood to be a kind of secondary version of the Ten Commandments. This section includes some of the greatest biblical hits like love your neighbor as yourself and don't stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. We'll be reading from this passage tomorrow morning. One of the striking things that you might notice in this whole section is the emphasis on honesty. Verse 11, you shall not deceive or lie to one another. Verse 13, you shall not defraud your fellow. Verse 35, honest balances, honest weights, honest measures shall you have. It's not surprising that this central code of conduct in the Torah considers honesty to be so essential. Telling the truth is more than just some kind of noble obligation we have to our fellow human beings and our personal relationships. Telling the truth is one of the basic principles that enable human beings to create civilizations. Without a standard of truth-telling, our economic and civil society cannot function properly. If you doubt this, think back to 2008. Or better yet, go watch The Big Short, a film that explains how the financial meltdown happened. From the first-time home buyers lying to themselves about what they could pay, to the shady loan dealers who seduced them with misrepresentations of mortgages, to the financiers who chopped up and deceptively packaged risky debt to hide its true nature, to the rating agencies who gave out false assurances. The whole stinking mess was built on fraud and misrepresentation of financial reality on every level. And when the truth came calling, it almost destroyed global capitalism. More recently, think of what happened to FTX and cryptocurrency markets. There is a cost to lies. And what do you think happens to democracy when citizens can't discern the truth about candidates, policies, the relevant facts and history that would enable us to make wise and informed decisions? One frightening answer to this question is the novel 1984 by George Orwell. In case it's been a while, I'll remind you. This book is a dystopia written in the 40s, the 1940s, imagining the 1980s as if the forces of Stalinism and fascism had won. The central character, Winston Smith, works in the Ministry of Truth, where he carefully erases any trace of inconvenient facts and history from all public record. This erasure of the true past makes it easier to manipulate the public, who are subjected constantly to mass media propaganda. The truth, produced and propagated by the Ministry of Truth, becomes disconnected from the facts of history and science. Instead, truth is whatever Big Brother says it is. This is why Timothy Snyder wrote in his book On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century, believe in truth. To abandon facts is to abandon freedom. Post-truth is pre-fascism. In our time and place, it may be much harder to erase the past than it was for Winston Smith, but it's also much easier to repeat and spread misinformation no matter how fast our fact checkers fly. Some analysts have already declared our time to be an era of post-truth politics. But is it always the right thing to tell the truth? Aren't there exceptions? When it comes to telling the truth in our personal relationships, things can be complicated. According to Jewish tradition, I want some water and I cannot have it. According to Jewish tradition, despite the commandments we saw in Leviticus, truth is not an absolute value. It must be weighed against other values, such as kindness. In Tractate Ketubot of the Talmud, it's taught, how does one praise the bride while fulfilling the mitzvah of rejoicing with the bride and groom? The school of Shammai says, describe her as she is. The school of Hillel says, describe the bride as beautiful and full of grace. No problem if she's beautiful and full of grace. But what if you think she isn't? As is almost always the case, who wins? Hillel. On the surface, we might understand Hillel to be saying the bride's feelings are more important than being brutally honest on her special day. For her sake, for the sake of her new spouse, for the sake of the celebration, it's okay to tell a white lie. A few years ago, I came across a much deeper reading from Alan Marinus, a contemporary master of Musar, who I'm going to be bringing up a lot this Yom Kippur. Musar, if you aren't familiar, is the Jewish practice of self-improvement. So Marinus writes, some people equate truth with speaking their minds. But speaking your mind may simply be articulating your unexamined prejudice or bias. Shammai would have us make our personal perceptions our guide to truth. On the other hand, Hillel says we need to challenge ourselves to see truth not only through our own eyes, but also through the eyes of other people tied into the situation. This is a point that a lot of people miss. We crave honesty. We long for leaders who will tell us the truth, who will say what they really think or believe without caring about what the polls say or what is politically correct. As we've seen over the past decade, that kind of honesty has very potent appeal. But the Talmud reminds us, speaking one's mind is not the same thing as telling the truth. Shammai presumed that his limited view of the bride was the truth with a capital T, and that he had a duty to say it no matter what the cost. Hillel was wise enough to see that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. His truth might not be the whole truth, an important distinction. It seems that there are matters which cannot or should not be held to a standard of objectivity, the beauty of a bride, perhaps. There are also matters in which the ultimate truth is not knowable or provable, the nature and existence of God, for example. 20th century philosopher Emmanuel Levinas explains that really big truths, like the truth revealed at Mount Sinai, are simply too much for one mind to hold or grasp on its own. He says, it is as if the multiplicity of persons were the condition for the plenitude of absolute truth. Wow, that is a mouthful. The totality of the truth is constituted from the combination of multiple people. The voice of revelation, as inflected precisely by each person's ear, would be necessary for the whole of the truth. So in other words, the reason that we were all present at the foot of Mount Sinai receiving revelation is because we each heard some different piece, and all of those pieces together add up to the truth that was revealed. There are certain questions or subjects which require multiple human perspectives to reach a larger ultimate truth. Each person holds some important point of view, and we all have our own partial truths to contribute. But does that mean that every person's perspective is equally true? Is every perspective valid? No. Not all truths are created equal. There are truths about human nature or God that may take generations of insight to fully discover. But there are also certain things that are true because they correspond to scientifically provable, widely confirmed physical reality. If you put your hand in a flame, it will hurt. There was a terrorist attack on September 11th, 2001 in New York City. If you drive west on I-70 for a few hours from Denver, you will get to Grand Junction. Truth has a strength to it, a certain practical inevitability and reality that falsehood never achieves. Even truths of history, though they may be forgotten by every living human mind, their traces linger in physical evidence. Truth can be known or unknown, but even when it's not known, yet it exists stubbornly, waiting to be discovered. And while subjectivity is also a stubborn, inescapable quality of our experience, that doesn't mean that we're doomed to be alone in our understanding of what is true and what is real. But what if a person really believes something that simply isn't true? What if the people around that person tell him the truth over and over, but he refuses to accept it? What if, based on some false belief, a person takes actions that might be justified if his false belief were true, but are not justified by actual reality of the true facts? Is that person morally responsible as if he were tethered to reality, or is he only responsible based on his own version of reality? This comes up in a few cases. It comes up in cases of racial violence. Was Andrew Lester scared of the unarmed black teen, Ralph Yarl, at his door? Yes. He might have been really scared. He really thought he was in danger. Perhaps he was soaking his mind in poisoned tales of crime and vigilante justice. Maybe he was just having a paranoid delusion. We don't know why he was so terrified, but in reality, the reality outside of his mind, the person at his door was just a harmless teenager confused about an address and looking up to pick up his siblings. Lester was scared, but in truth, he was never in danger. Does his fear give him the right to shoot? I hope we can all say no. No. It may give us pause in rendering a sentence. It may help us to find compassion for him as a human being, but morally, his false beliefs do not get him off the hook. Why? We don't want to live in a world where one person's paranoia or racism or narcissism or any other flavor of detachment from reality gives them license to cause harm. A few years ago, I heard a TED talk by Deborah Lipstadt, a scholar who spent many years battling Holocaust denial here and in Europe. She added a layer that I found very helpful. Here's what she said. She said, many of us have been taught to think that there are facts and there are opinions. After studying Holocaust deniers, I think differently. There are facts and there are opinions and there are lies. And what deniers want to do is take their lies, dress them up as opinions, maybe edgy opinions, maybe sort of out-of-the-box opinions, but then if they're opinions, they should be part of the conversation, and then they encroach on the facts. But truth is not relative. Many of us have grown up in the world of the academy and enlightened liberal thought, where we're taught everything is open to debate. But that is not the case. There are certain things that are true. There are indisputable facts, objective truths. The earth is not flat. The climate is changing. Elvis is not alive. Lipstadt's point here is that dividing the world into facts and opinions, or subjective and objective truth, and proceeding in good faith, misses something important. Lies. There are matters of opinion. Is the bride beautiful? Which political party is best? And there are facts. Elvis is dead. Sorry. And then there are deliberate deceptions. But when lies pretend to be matters of opinion, they become particularly dangerous, creating false narratives in which matters of historical or scientific fact are suddenly up for debate, and each side gets equal airtime. It's how we wasted decades debating whether humans contributed to climate change instead of facing the inconvenient truth and working on solutions. It's why so many people in the US today still consider the fact of who won the election in 2020 to be a matter of partisan opinion, even after numerous court cases have combed through evidence and responsible, grounded officials on the losing side have testified about factual results. It's why pundits, media, and political leaders are so profoundly irresponsible when they continue to frame the issue as a matter in which there are multiple valid reality-based opinions to debate. No. Tell the truth. There is a truth here, and it's not just a subjective or partisan matter. Not everyone will like it. I can think of an election that I didn't like, but allowing disappointment or darker motives to call into question the entire apparatus of democracy because you don't like the truth is dangerous. In the end, being honest with others begins with being honest with ourselves. The Jewish term for this is to be a person who speaks the truth in his heart. Dover ha'emet bilvavo. A few years ago, my son demonstrated to me that this is something inborn and natural, even if we lose track of it. When Adam was about 5 years old, I asked him one day, "Why is it important to tell the truth?" And he said, "So that other people will believe what you say." We'd been over the story of the boy who cried wolf more than once, and he knew by then that lying can backfire if you do it too much. So then I asked him, "Is it important not to lie to yourself?" He paused and laughed, half rolling his eyes as if he'd realized he was being asked a trick question. "Lie to yourself?" he said incredulously. "You can't lie to yourself, or at least I can't." And I wondered, is that so? Unless he was deceiving us both right there and then, his comment attests that there must be a point in childhood where we simply don't have the extra mental nooks and crannies to hide truths away from ourselves or believe the falsehoods that we ourselves manufacture. How old are we when we develop that sophisticated ability to deceive ourselves? Why do we develop it? Now I wonder, is there a way to undo it? What if we could pause that ability, even if only for just one day a year? What kind of safe space or communal practice could help us to let down our guard and face the truths that hide in those dark corners? What magic words could unlock our capacity to admit true things we wish weren't true and to be better for it? How about Yom Kippur? We gather tonight, tomorrow, in an ocean of words, words that propose to heal. We listen, we sing, we recite, we confess words of truth. The truth about who we have been, what we have done, what we have left undone and unsaid. We attempt tonight to create a safe space in which to examine ourselves and listen to that still small voice in the heart who will tell us the truth. A couple of weeks ago, in preparation for tonight, I asked some of you who came to Slichot to tell the truth to yourselves in writing. And I have been holding on to these, your confessions, ever since. So many of them, so familiar, so forgivable, so true and real and heartbreaking. These confessions are your words, naming hard truths about actions, habits, character flaws, sins, harmful behaviors, hurtful behaviors, carried, remembered, documented, and spoken, admitted, confessed, onto pieces of paper that I promised I would read aloud and then destroy. And I will. These are the truths of who we have been in our own honest eyes. But later, when I read them to you, I hope that you can remember they are only partial truth, the truth of the past, the truth we name aloud now in order to learn and change and be forgiven. These truths need not carry with us into the future. It will be up to us whether we relive them or choose a new way forward. Through this sacred day of Yom Kippur, may we find the courage and the strength to listen to that voice which tells the truth in our hearts. And may we also remember that facing the truth is not just a matter of facing what is broken and wrong and shameful, but also what is beautiful and loving and good. And may the truth of our goodness shine as a guiding light for all of us in the year to come. Amen.